Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to round 2 of the Process Innovation Challenge. This is our 12th Process Innovation Challenge. We're thrilled to have you here this afternoon. We've got 5 more innovators competing for a chance to move on to our final round as part of LocWorld47 in Berlin on Tuesday, July 11th. I'm here with my co-host. My name is Alex Burnett with LocWorld, and I'm here with Dave Ruan of XTM. How are you, Dave?
Very well, Alex. It's really exciting. The good news is we've actually got 5+1 innovators in this round. So
I'm sorry.
We have 6, and we
don't
had a
pay
really
me
good
for
round.
my math.
And we had a really good round yesterday. We're really looking forward to more of the same today. And very welcome to everybody. So how does it all work? Let's kind of go through a little bit what the pick is about. Well, we had, for these preliminary rounds, we had 14 innovators, 2 rounds. The idea is to pitch your idea, of course, and you pitch that to the audience, who is our dragons and your fellow innovators and some other folks who've joined us today. So welcome to everybody. You've 3 minutes to pitch on 3 slides, and I did mention we've got 3 dragons. Well, who are our dragons? We're very glad to be able to welcome Bert Esselink back to the Pick Dragon stage. Many people will know Bert or have his book on your bookshelf somewhere. Julia was a previous Pick winner, and really happy to have her here. Knows a lot about process, so watch out for those process questions. And then Patricia is a previous Pick participant. Again, another process dragon, so watch out for those ones. So very happy to have you dragons. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Dave Ruan. Alex has introduced himself, and that's the team here. So, who's speaking today? Well, first up, we're going to have Robert, then Rafal, Peter, Saurabh, Dirk, and Pievel. And we're really looking forward to hearing your innovations, folks. Let's get the show on the road. And let's start with you, Robert. So, Robert, if you would join us on the stage.
Yes, hello.
Hello. And,
okay.
I'll try and spotlight you, and off you go.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, dear dragons, it is my pleasure to present to you today a translation memory cleanup method based on artificial intelligence. Next slide, please. As we all know, translation memories are an invaluable linguistic asset, but however, unfortunately, over time, they become subject to deterioration in many areas, most prominently in 100% matches and context matches that are reused without review. And cleaning translation memory is a laborious, time-intensive task, especially for those huge volume TMs. So this is why it scarcely, if ever, gets done. But with our novel solution, where we apply a semantic understanding AI model, we can isolate and pinpoint the areas in translation memories that should receive special attention from the reviewer, with semantic misalignment and segment misalignment in mind. We can do this at a fraction of the cost and time that it would be required from a manual reviewer for a comparable effort. For instance, on a TM of 100,000 segments, a human would spend 1,000 hours with a manual review. We cut down this time by 95% to 50 hours. Next slide, please. And this is how we do it. Please. Thank you very much. So what we do is we create a graph, what we call a TM distribution graph. And on this graph, every single segment is assigned a number, a distance from source metric. This metric is how the AI model thinks the source and target segments, how close they are in meaning. So the segments at 0.0 are untranslated target segments. And those from our experience in production tasks from the area of 1.0 to 0.4 are sound translations. But after the threshold of 0.4, you will start seeing more and more mistranslations and misalignments when the number gets higher. Next slide, please. So normally a human would have to go one by one through every single segment here to pinpoint and fish out those needles in the haystack, those segments that need special attention. Please progress the slide. But with our method, we can pinpoint and isolate the area of problematic segments. Forward, please. And we do the same for target equals source segments. We just, please progress the slide. We just isolate with our own AI model the segments that need review in terms of translatability. Next slide, please. So to summarize, the benefits of cleaning up a TM are increased quality in translation moving forward, but most importantly, you will not, the guarantee you will not make huge semantic errors in your repeatable content. And with our method, the first time ever, we can guarantee this in a scalable, finite amount of time. Thank you very much, and I am looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Robert. Very interesting stuff. Sort of AI looking for things to do. I like the TM distribution model. Dragons, what questions do you have for Robert?
What performance metrics did you look at when you evaluated that this worked? Right. So after the 0.4, that is the tolerated difference, I guess. How do you know that after is where it's leading to issues as opposed to wanted deviations, if I've understood correctly?
I see. Good question. What we did is we pragmatically basically tested a lot of TMs, and we statistically analyzed them when the errors started appearing. So by just the sheer power of statistic, we are able to identify that the issues start appearing frequently over 0.4. And yes, you will see those statistical deviations. So for singular TMs, you will sometimes see there is appearing at 0.3, 0.35. But on average, what we've measured is 0.4 and more.
Great question. Thanks, Julia. Dragons, any more questions for Robert?
Yeah, I have a quick question. How do you kick off this process? It is a tool for anyone can use, or this is something specific for Argos in this case that has a specific need of cleaning up these TMs, which I'm assuming those TMs typically are something you get from your customers and they have to be cleaned up. And it's not something that, because the more you work in organized ways, the TMs should be already cleaned up, already relatively clean, right?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. We use it in Argos internally, yes, of course, but this tool, this method, when we developed it, it was with every single client that works with Argos in mind. So any client that has a translation memory and would like to, first and foremost, see the quality of their translation memory with this TM distribution graph, they can do so. And if they decide they would like to invest into the cleanup, they can do so as well. We've finalized some projects with this, arriving at, I would say, good results.
One more question about this. As you said, this is powered by artificial intelligence. Am I right to assume the more you clean, the more you can adjust the algorithm? So this is this feedback loop that it is getting better and better every time?
What we are doing is we are collecting data in an anonymized way, so we can fine-tune the algorithm moving forward. We still need more data to do that. But the issue here is really that we need a lot of data. Let's put it that way. So it will take some time to collect it to be able to improve hugely upon the results we've arrived at right now.
Brilliant. We need a lot of data. Thank you very much, Robert. Statistical deviations, TM distribution graphs. No, you're not at math class, folks. You are indeed at pick 12, preliminary round number 2. And thanks a million, Robert. So moving on.
Thank you very much.
Cheers, Robert. We'll invite Rafał Jaworski to the stage.
Okay, hello everybody. Nice to see you. Right, actually, I enjoyed the map lesson. Let's get on with it because I'm going to be talking about AI too. So, right, let me kick off. So, my name is Rafał. I'm from XTM International, and today, well, I am supported, as you can see, by the big artificial XTM AI brain, which will help me in my innovation and in my presentation, hopefully too. And my presentation is about synonyms. So I'll be talking a lot about synonyms. Let's move to the next slide. So when you're translating, have you ever seen this specific problem? A single term like settings panel can be synonymously seen as many different varieties. You can have settings panel, you can have preferences view, settings dialog, adjustments view, and that's really a pain because some of those synonyms are considered standard, some of those are not, like the adjustments view is sounding a bit odd. But in translation, you, as a translator, you have to make a decision on which of the synonyms you can use interchangeably and which of them you cannot, right? And if we move on to the next slide. So the problem is that a single term, and I mean by term, I mean a phrase often, can be translated in multiple ways. Some of them are acceptable, some of them are not. And for a translator, it would be very beneficial to see all the possible alternatives in the translation so that it is possible to make an informed decision on which of those synonyms to use. And actually, well, the old way we would do it, we would use a thesaurus-like dictionary, right? But we are in the future right now, so why not to use some AI big brain time and use an automatic algorithm to do the following, to actually process your terminology database beforehand, before you start the translation, and to identify groups of synonyms in your terminology database. Let's go to the next slide and see an example. So the old way would be just to use the thesaurus-like dictionary. It doesn't have to be a book-like dictionary, right? It can be an electronic dictionary, but still, this kind of dictionary requires the user, the translator, to look up, right? To actively look up those alternatives, and they typically only work for single words, right? You don't often have synonymical phrases in dictionaries like that. Also, those dictionaries are very general. They are not tailored to the actual content that you're translating for a specific client, for example, right? With XTM-AI algorithm, we obtain the following results. You can identify groups as such, right? So this is our solution, and we believe that it will make the work of the translator much easier. Thank you so much, and I'm waiting for questions.
Thank you
After
very
you
much.
identify, sorry, go on.
You just jumped in there. So there's loads of questions. So Julia, over to you, and let's pack them in.
Sorry,
there.
I just couldn't, like, what happens after you identify them? Like, how are they treated in the TMS?
Right. So in the TMS, in the CAT tool, let's say, they are then presented in the as you normally see the window with terminology, right? Then you will see also not only the term that appears in your source sentence, but also the alternatives, and that's both on the source side, right, and the translation side.
So the grouping of terms happens in both ends, not only English, but also English, sorry, source language, but also the target languages. But it doesn't mean that you may still need to have one different translation for each of the synonyms.
That's true, but when we present all the possible alternatives, then the user, the translator, can really make a more informed decision, right? So there is still a human needed in it, right? I will always acknowledge that there is always a human needed in all those AI magic tools, but then the human can have a narrow range of alternatives to choose from.
I have a question as well, because I mean, this really intrigues me, the AI and machine learning and that whole area. How can you, and you say that your system is able to find that configuration panel is a synonym for setting screen, for example.
Sure.
What data is actually used to train your engines to understand that they're the same?
That's another great question. If you had followed my work on interlanguage vector space, maybe that rings some bell, I hope, because that's the technology that's behind it. And this specific piece of technology is trained by a huge corpus crawled from the whole internet, and applies the word to vec like algorithms on single words. And now we extended it to be able to compute vectors also for phrases. And then we can basically compare the vectors for the whole phrases and compute mathematical similarity between them, between the phrases.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Right. Brilliant. It sounds like we're good on questions. Rafael, thank you very much. You got me thinking about Christmas time with all that cinnamon. Sorry.
Oh, like fantastic fun. Thank you. All right.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Rafael. So let's move along. We're making good progress here. That's the way of the pick. You know, keep it moving. So Peter, we'd ask you to join us on the stage.
Oh, thank you. So this is Peter. I'm from VMware. Maybe it is quite famous in recent days. Today, my topic is about accessibility testing. In previous times, I always submit the topic for maybe globalization related, but this year I will try to submit another idea for accessibility. Next slide, please. Okay, so accessibility is actually maybe by not uncared for accessibility for most company, but actually it is really important for those people who maybe such as blind or some have some disability to the peoples. So our company is also pay attention to accessibility. And in the normal ways, we have a VPAT team. We have a PAT team, which is to verify the accessibility manually. However, it is inefficient. So that's why we have the idea for accessibility testing of a service. So in this model, we can do on-demand testing and integrate to automation testing in CI/CD. And we can also ask user to create the automation test using our tools, VTest. In this solution, we can use web plugin, client library, visual report, and web API to trigger the testing. And our backend can communicate with multiple accessibility tools. So next slide, please. So what is the benefit? The first one is we have multiple interface. We can run the accessibility verification with multiple input interface. And we have the configuration. So user can also do result filter. And we can also integrate to CI/CD. So user can, the developer can integrate to their existing solution very easy. And we also have a seminar recommendations to view the report with visual report. This is very important as we have a survey. The many developers do not have experience on accessibility development. So that's why the accessibility issue was uncared for. Next slide, please. So those are two scenarios. One scenario is we can test with visual report. So user just give URLs and do quick test, and they can retrieve the visual result. Here is I need to address it is visual. And the second is we can test with client library. So this one, we can integrate the SCD and with setting configurations, invoke with the library and retrieve the result. With those process, the developer can find the accessibility issue very easy and fix the issue quickly. Next. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Very important topic, accessibility, clearly. So really great to see that. Dragons, questions?
Yeah, I have a question actually. I mean, yeah, like Dave said, it's an important topic. I was struggling a bit to see the link to localization, right, and globalization, but you started your pitch by saying that you, on purpose, took a broader topic. I'm just wondering, to make a link to localization still, I think accessibility, and I'm really not an expert, there's many different local regulations, right? I mean, UK has different accessibility regulations than US, etc. Does your tool support local accessibility standards?
Actually, the industrial standard is WCAG, which is we also use this standard. And actually, if you develop to support accessibility, actually each OS will have its, for example, screen reader to understand the accessibility. So it can read or can zoom in and zoom out to enable the accessibility.
Okay, so once you've tested with your process a software product or UI, the accessibility applies pretty much across the industry, but globally.
Yes, globally.
Right? Okay. Cool.
So I have a quick question. So the actual innovation is the way this accessibility testing is done as a service, or that the accessibility testing is done? Because as you said in the past, that was not really
test as a service.
As a service. So
there are two key points. One is we have the backend to communicate with multiple accessibility engine. As you know, for example, Google has its accessibility tools. Microsoft will also have, and we also have some other standalone tools. And with this solution, we communicate with multiple. And the number two is visual report. The visual report helps developer to understand what is the issue, where is the issue, and how to fix. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks, Dragons. Great question. Peter, thanks for joining the pick. So we'll ask our next innovator to join us on stage. So next up is Saurabh. Saurabh, can you join us?
Yep, I'm there. I think, I hope you can hear and see me.
We can hear you, and we should be able to see you. Sure. Off you go.
All right. So hello, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to present our innovation. Today, I will share a brief about source code internationalization self-healing using AI. We call this technology as Dr. Global. This is already registered as an invention on the IP.com database. We can get to the next slide. The prevailing internationalization technology in the industry is rule-based static code analysis. This is somewhat a primitive method, I would say. The scans are unreliable because of huge number of false positives that we see. Static scans are reactive because they find issues only after they have made their way into the code. Scaling those tools for new programming languages is difficult. Removing false positives from the scan reports and fixing the issues is a lot of manual work. These tools, I would say, are dumb, as they can only report the issues. These tools cannot warn the developer of the issues before they get into the code. And moreover, the tools are not intelligent enough to provide any fix for the issues they have found. So as a result, I would say that the process is extremely costly and time consuming, resulting into pushbacks many times from the business stakeholders, and thus creating an inconsistent quality experience for the customers and losing loss of business. We can get to the next slide, please. So our solution is Dr. Global. It's an acronym for Dependable and Reliable Globalization Logic based on AI/ML. This AI/ML based system is trained on data from source code scans that we had done over several years now. Consequently, this intelligent system is applied at the IDE level. It highlights any internationalization issues when the developer is writing the code. And not just that, it also recommends how to avoid or fix the issues to the developer at that time, and thus preventing any issues to creep into the software going forward. And then the remediation system automatically builds and runs the code, and if everything looks fine, it automatically even checks in the code for the users. And this is what we call as self-healing of the code, because it learns from the past mistakes and gives extremely high accuracy scan outputs. The AI helps further in automatically applying the fix to the code, eliminating manual work end to end in the process. Our metrics show that we are preventing more than 90% of internationalization issues on the products that this is applied to. So we can go to the next slide. And then this invention that we have developed takes NetApp ahead of its competitors to multiple years. Gone are the days of error-prone code scans. Internationalization is now fully automated. Our code scans now show negligible false positives, highly scalable to many new programming languages, fully compliant with the DevOps pipelines, and above all, internationalization issue management is now preventive, proactive, and fast. So thank you, and looking forward to the questions.
Thank you, Saurabh. Self-healing of the code, love that. Also love a good acronym, Dr. Global, like what you did there. Dragon, questions?
For someone who has been at the receiving end of the competition's issues with false positives and the frustration that has generated in the business, how negligible is the number of false positives that Dr. Global incurs?
So false positives, we used to see in past. We have used industry tools. You saw some names on the previous slide. We have used licensed tools. We did away from that. We used open source tools like SonarQube, built our own rules inside it. But ultimately, we continued to see at that time at least 40–50% of false positives. And now what we see is 10 to 15% of false positives, which is a big achievement. And because this is a machine learning based system, it keeps learning from the mistakes that it makes. So we keep training the engine and it becomes more intelligent. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
I have a question as well. I love this one a lot. It reminds me a little bit of the TM cleaning that we heard before. How far do the systems go? I mean, I know that they analyze, they test, and they come up with reports, reducing number of false positives as much as possible. But we just heard about TM cleaning. We now code cleaning. How far does it go in actually actively cleaning the code, and how do developers appreciate that?
Yeah, so it goes as far as the left it can go. And as I said earlier in the presentation, that it highlights. So if a developer is writing code, it will actually highlight in the IDE if the code that is being written is not compliant to the standards. So it will highlight. The further step is during the peer reviews or during the code review, we have applied it to that stage as well. So if the developer has still committed that code without changing as per the suggestion, it will again highlight at the review stage. So it is again at the next level. And then basically it also is post the fact. If still the issue has gone into it, and if its issue stays in the system, it will also recommend a fix, and the developer can just click yes or no, and we have not applied, although it is capable of directly changing the code, but we have not applied that thing, although it can do that, just to make sure that the developer has the control, so it can go to that extent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And what is what are the top sort of 3 issues you still find in the typical internationalization issues?
Well, so what we are seeing is we are applying it to new programming languages all the time, and as the NetApp is also quite progressive company, we are acquiring products, startups from outside. So when a new kind of maybe a semantic of the code comes into picture, sometimes we need to continue to train the system, but it takes a few rounds of training and then it does the job.
Quick question on my end, if I'm allowed, Dave.
Oh, go on. So quick one.
Very quick. So I see the reactive approach, which is basically with this artificial intelligence, you are managing to reduce the number of false positives, so developers can concentrate on what they have to fix. But in line with what Bert mentioned, can you penalize them so they don't make again and again the same mistakes? Is this process somehow providing some kind of output, so upstream you can try to so they learn, maybe not with artificial intelligence, by like with gaming intelligence, something, so they don't make the same mistakes again and again. So we move to a more proactive approach than reactive.
No, definitely, Patricia, and that's also a great question. So what we do is we publish the metrics with each scan. And if the things that are recommended and manually, if they are found to be fixed, but the developer did not fix it, we publish that separately, and it is kind of these reports go up level in the organization. So there is definitely for developers, it's their reputation that is at stake with this. So the metrics do the job for us. The metrics that we publish.
Sorry, just a quick one. This can run on new code only, or also legacy? Can you sort of?
So that's a great question to ask on chat. So we need to move on. Sorry,
sure. So very quick question. Yes, it can run on legacy, and we are doing it on our legacy products as well.
Great stuff. So loads of questions, and just a reminder, please add questions in on chat, and our innovators hopefully will get back to you on the chat tool. So lots of interest there. So let's have some offline conversations on that one. Thank you very much, Saurabh. Really nice job. And we'll welcome our next innovator on stage. So Dirk, when you're ready, please join us.
All right, here I am. You can see me and hear me, I hope.
Yep.
All right. All right, so hello everyone, good morning, good day, good afternoon to all of you. Today I'm presenting on Project MOVA and how HubSpot is using content performance data to dynamically tier localization workflows. If we can go to the first slide, please. So at its core, we are iterating on an established concept that will be familiar to everyone here, namely that different content types for different target languages often go through different translation workflows. Typical example of that is marketing content that goes through human translation, whereas user-generated content might go through machine translation. But what if you wanted to go further than that? What if you wanted to differentiate within a certain content type? You might want to say to send some of your assets, your best assets, your most important assets through human translation, but others might not necessarily warrant that treatment. Because with most content, you will have significant performance differences across your assets, as shown in this example. This is the traffic distribution across HubSpot's knowledge base. And we can see that there are some really high performing articles on the left-hand side, but the vast majority of articles is sort of long tail content with significantly fewer views. So we asked ourselves, can we use performance metrics like this to automatically determine which translation workflow a given article for a given language should be going through? If we can go to the next slide, please. So we built a custom app that integrates with our CMS, our TMS and MT engines, as well as our internal communications platform. And this app monitors our CMS in real time for updated and newly published articles that need to be translated, and then funnels them into different translation workflows based on the criteria that we have defined. These criteria can be updated on the fly and in real time. You can see an example configuration on the right here. And the system has 4 main workflows: raw machine translation processing with TM leverage. Those are our automated, fully touchless workflows. And then we have post-editing and human translation as sort of human-in-the-loop workflows as well. I especially want to emphasize here the use of TM leverage combined with machine translation processing, which is especially important because our system is dynamic. So an article that previously went through human translation might go through machine translation next time it's updated and it gets retranslated. So it's important that we can leverage the existing like reviewed human translated leverage that we may have. We can go to the next slide, please. So today we run our entire knowledge base localization on the system, and it's enabled us to reduce cost by over 20% and improve turnaround time by over 50%. And this, by the way, is just for human-in-the-loop processing. This is excluding machine translation processing entirely. Now, you might say that some of that is due to the inefficiency of the previous process, and I won't correct you there. But it's this system that has enabled us to do this. That being said, the current implementation is obviously specific to our use case, specific to our tech stack, but the concept itself is generalizable. It can be used with any CMS, TMS, MT configuration, as long as those tools provide the necessary programmatic access. And that's all I have. Thank you very much for listening.
Dirk, wow, you caught me unawares there.
Sorry, I had to speed through this a little bit.
Very interesting stuff. Means that you'll have more time on questions with the dragons. 50% turnaround time and 20% cost, they're very good numbers. Even, as you said, if the process rigid wasn't that great. Let's see if the dragons want to dig in a bit more on that. So
sure.
Who wants to start?
Yeah, I have a question. Sorry, go ahead, Julia.
You go.
I had a question on the 52% time savings.
Yes.
That's indeed an impressive number. What was the 52% spent on before? Human translation of content that's now going to MT, or?
This was actually previously also machine translation post-editing for the most part. The inefficiency was mostly in determining which articles would need to be updated. PMs basically like grabbing all of those articles, like importing them all into like a project and so on and so on. And those are all the steps that we have now automated. We basically just, the system generates a list. These are the articles that were, let's say, updated last week that we want to send for translation this week. And it's like 2-3 clicks and then it's done.
How long do you measure the success of an article? I mean, you say the number of views is the main criteria, right? To send something to a certain workflow. I mean, you publish English first, for example. I mean, do you wait for 1 day to measure the number of views, or a week?
Yes. So we can do this. We can segment this by language. So if an article hasn't been translated before, we would have to use the English. And typically, what we're looking at is aggregate weekly views over the last 6 months. For articles, for languages where we have, where our localization has existed for a while, we will actually use the target language view count for that, but with the same idea, aggregate weekly over 6 months. And I should also mention this is necessarily limited to view count. You can use any data point that a CMS can give you on your assets, right? That could be conversions, could be revenue attribution. Whatever your CMS can give you, technically you can use for a system like this.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Any more questions, dragons?
No, I think this in part answered my question, which was, what KPIs are you looking at besides number of views? And yeah, I guess the innovation, I mean, there's I think a variety, a number of people who already look at performance data to decide on localization workflows. I guess here the innovation is in the automation and real-time piece.
It's in the automation, and it's I would argue it's also in the combining machine translation with TM leverage, which I didn't really have like a whole lot of time to go into, but it's a piece of the system that I'm quite proud of, just because it makes such a system so much more useful, being able to leverage human reviewed TM leverage wherever you can, and basically just use MT to sort of fill the gaps.
Yeah, it felt like that one would have been quite meaty as well.
Yes.
It's probably a separate discussion, and yeah, very, very intriguing indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dirk, because you're being so good on time, I'll give you another question. So you mentioned in your presentation, the concept is generalizable. One of the things we think about is applicability, right?
Mm-hmm.
How generalizable would you say it is?
Well, technically, someone could build this as a product because this is connecting to third-party applications, right? CMSs, TMSs. You will not be able to to build a one-size-fits-all solution that fits any sort of configuration of these tools. But you should at least be able to build a configuration here that could be plugged into the most common tools, right? This could be technically, I guess, this could be a middleware product on its own that you could sell to buyers who have like compatible tools in their tech stack.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So Dirk, well done. And we'll move on. We have one innovator left today. So we'll ask Pavel to join us. Pavel?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me? Can you see me?
Yes.
We soon will, if we can't.
Perfect. So yeah, hi everyone. My name is Pavel. I'm a product lead at Intento, and today I will tell you about our small innovation, but it makes many people happy even now. So it's about application of machine translation to ICU. But let me give you some context first on the next slide. Imagine Process Innovation Challenge has decided to build an application where participants and attendees can share their impressions about presentations. And you see on the screen, some of the participants were heavily impressed by my presentation today. It's on a live feed. And you see also, depending on the number of participants, the structure of sentences is different. So under the hood, it looks like this on top of the slide. So it's a template where the system selects some parts of the sentences, and depending on the number of participants, creates the message. And developers love that because this is the most easy way to internationalize your software and tailor it to standards. It's not only about plurals, it can be applied to genders, to date, time formats, and so on. But what do you think? Do translators love it as well? On the next slide, we will reveal that. So imagine as a translator, you receive something like this to translate into other languages. And okay, you import it into CAT tool. Some of the CAT tools are more friendly to this format and they highlight the syntax. Some of the CAT tools are less friendly. Some of the CAT tools just break everything, and some of the CAT tools just show it as a plain text. So it's a lot of room for mistake. You can mess with brackets. You can translate some operators that don't have to be translated. You can mess with number of plural rules because the set of plural rules is different in different languages. And so the cost of mistake is very high because these mistakes can be discovered later at the testing stage or even by end users. And of course, there is no chance any MT provider supports that. So it's just mostly manual work. Some of the CAT tools solve that problem with some tricky technologies, but we have decided to go further and apply any MT to ICU syntax. So what we have done on the next slide, you will see, we have decided, okay, let's take the template, define the rules of the target language. In this case, it's Ukrainian. They have more plural forms than English. And we just expand the template into sentences, feed them to machine translation, all variants, and then combine them back. So as a result, you have correct syntax, you have correct number of plural forms, everything is correct. You just have to check if everything is okay from the fluency perspective. It works with any MT provider in any TMS or even in IDE if you want. So this is our innovation, and it makes translators happy because it's something that already works. We have piloted with one of our customers. They said, yeah, it rocks. Thank you very much.
This is where you drop the mic, I think.
Yes.
Pavel, right? It rocks. So, dragons, does it rock?
I have a question. How can you, so not all the, that you said, not all the CAD tools will manage in the same way all these ICU segments. So I understand what you do is you can somehow independently or ignore the CAD tool. So you go into a level, you create those fake temporary sentences so you can properly machine translate, and then you have to put it back into the CAD tool.
Yes.
How does it work? Will that work? I mean, not technically, but would that work with all CAD tools? Or do you mean you need a minimum structure, or you need the CAD tool to handle this in a minimum way?
That's a good question. It's one of the main pains working with CAD tools, because all of them invent their standards of handling content. But generally what we do is we just take the text as plain text and do the magic on our end and push it back as plain text. And then the CAD tool can do whatever they want with it. Most of the internal QA checks fail because different number of brackets, different number of forms. But yeah, I think it's less problems anyway, because at least you have fluent translations and it doesn't ruin some developer workflows. But yeah, it's one of the challenges. It's even easier to do it with MT than with the CAD tools and TMSs.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is once the translations are back in a CAD tool, then the automated checks, the quality assurance steps that you can enable, then those will fail. They will not recognize that that's been, okay. Cool.
Managers should have to tweak them because most of the CAD tools are not ICU friendly at all. But good news, it's around 5% of the whole content. So these elements, but they create the most pain. So yeah. It's a balance, what you choose, failed QA checks or angry developers.
Sure. Is this the next phase?
Sorry?
Is fixing this issue a next iteration of the project?
Yeah, we have a bonus track. While analyzing error reports, we realized we also can create highlights for source text improvements, because developers are not linguists and they can create templates in the way that they don't perform well in languages with quite different word order, like Japanese. So we have managed to pull these highlights and create some kind of reports with suggestions of what can be improved in the source text. So probably a part for Dr. Global as well.
I have a final question if we have some time on this one. I'm just wondering about the whole concept of UI localization, software localization, and MT. I mean, I think for humans, it's already very complicated, right? To translate software strings, you've got length restriction, you've got all of these variables from ICU elements in there. How well does MT perform on this kind of content, regardless of the technical solutions? I mean, how much of post editing is needed, or have you actually run projects where you can just publish it after MT?
It's a very good question. It very depends, because mobile applications, they have short pieces of text, and neural MT does not perform well on short pieces of text, but it saves you a lot of time while, I don't know, translating error messages and so on. But so in the last probably, I don't know, 5 years of Intento, we measured this magic number so that well-curated MT can save you up to 80% of human editing efforts. But it depends. If you have some very tricky, I don't know, online game, there is no chance you reach this number, because it's creative content. So it has a lot of dependencies. But so average number for, I don't know, SaaS product, it's 70% can be saved if MT is well curated.
Yeah, most of the content is in the messages anyway, right? Not in the very short strings, the most complicated ones. Yeah. Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pavel. Very interesting stuff. So thank you very much. And wow, that brings us to the end of session 2, but don't go away just yet. We started with some maths, right? So we had some deviations, remember all that stuff. We had some cinnamon rolls on the way. Hopefully you had a coffee to hand with that, with Rafael. We met Dr. Global, remember him or her, not sure, Sarah. Saw some accessibility testing and automating the long tail content. And there, Pavel brought us into the world of ICU and MT. So kind of back to maths again, right? Super interesting innovations. Thank you very much to all our innovators. And Alex, where do we go from here?
You bet. So as you can see, we had 7 innovators pitch yesterday too. So doing my math, if it's correct, we had 13 total innovators. That now has to be whittled down to 5 innovators that will be moving on to Berlin on Tuesday, July 12th. What's really exciting for me is that we'll be under the bright lights again for the first time in 3 years and actually on a stage in your physical presence. It's been great running these on Zoom up until now, but when the Zoom ends, we're all back in our little corners of the world. To be back on stage is going to bring some of the most value, I think, back to our innovators, and that you can actually go out in the audience and talk to people after the pitches. So,
what? So we have to meet people again?
We have to meet people again. You can't keep hiding out in your basement, Dave. So just to say, LocWorld Berlin is coming up July 11th through the 13th. Our final round takes place on the 12th. The winner will be announced at the end of the conference on the 13th. Dave, you want to tell us a little bit about the prizeware?
Well, so our winner gets the winner's trophy, of course, and the recognition of winning the pick, which some would say in itself is enough of a prize, but we have some credit for future LocWorlds. We have Multilingual have given us prizes before and hopefully will again. And we have some other prizes which we'll tell people about between now and July. So yeah, for some people winning is enough. I'm going to put Julia on the spot and ask her, what did winning do for you, Julia?
It felt really empowering at first. I was always the geek in the room before LocWorld, and I guess the pick showed me that I could do it, I could present, but also the power of presenting, right? Until it's just an idea in your head, it's just going to stay there and it's not going to change the world. And then all, of course, pretty things linked to one being a bit more well-known in the industry and everything that comes with it.
Brilliant. And you became a dragon, right? So good stuff. Thanks, Julia. And of course, you can keep up to date. If you're not following us already, you have different options here. You can go to the website pick.locworld.com. You can follow us on Twitter at L10NPick or on LinkedIn. Just look for Process Innovation Challenge and you'll find us on LinkedIn as well. And you'll hear about the results. And innovators, thank you once again. We will reach out to you all and give you feedback, of course, personally. And without further ado, Dragons, thank you very much. So Julia, thank you. Patricia and Bert.
Thanks, Dragons.
See you all in Berlin, and hopefully we'll see our finalists there as well. Alex.
Yeah, Dave, before we sign off, I just thought I'd say, so now it's the tough work that our Dragons will go and deliberate. We will come up with a short list of our 5 innovators that are going to be invited to the final round. We will be publishing that by next Monday to the PIC website. Again, check PIC website on Monday for the list of the innovators that moved on. We'll then notify our innovators, and they have about 1 week to secure travel approval, make sure they can go to Berlin. If they're unable to, we'll invite a next alternate to join instead. But can't wait for this live in-person final round again, Tuesday, July 12th in Berlin at the Intercontinental Hotel, part of LocWorld47 Conference. And on behalf of Ulrich Hennis and Donna Parrish, the founders of LocWorld, I want to thank everyone for joining us, for making this competition so great. We'll see you soon in Berlin.
Thanks, everyone.